What was that?
I have no idea. Let's try this gas business again.
Yeah. What was that? Did it work this time?
Yep. It did. It did. I might have used the map.
Why?
Huh?
Why, if it's
You
been...
can get me out of here.
The route calculation is complete. Proceed to the nearest road. Turn left after 500 feet onto Reese Boulevard West. Turn next left. Turn left after 200 feet. Turn next left.
People gathered at Lady Ray Thomas Recreation Center for the Juneteenth Health and Wealth Summit. They were connected with groups providing mental health and financial literacy support, as well as tips on how to become an entrepreneur. Kika Jackson is the event organizer. She intentionally hosted the event in a mostly black community in West Charlotte.
This is a day that we celebrate freedom, and if we're free, we might as well be able to live in generational wealth. So we have these resources here to connect the community so that they can better their lives.
The Juneteenth holiday commemorates the day in 1865 when the last enslaved people in Texas learned of their freedom. Saturday's event also featured representatives from Habitat for Humanity who spoke to residents about the process of home ownership. More events are scheduled this week in Charlotte to celebrate Juneteenth on Thursday.
Turn right after 800 feet onto I-77 south toward Charlotte. Turn second right.
Knicks fans, the two-time Rock and Roll Hall of Famer says she is coming back to Charlotte to perform at Spectrum Center on October 21st. It's got fans saying, "Ooh, baby, ooh." Pre-sale for the concert begins on Wednesday. General ticket sales begin on Friday. Knicks last performed in Charlotte on May 2024 as a headliner for the inaugural Love and Life Music Fest. There is a 50% chance of storms in our area this evening. Right now it's 88 degrees in Charlotte under mostly cloudy skies. This is WFAE News.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the principle that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. From Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all, on the web at theschmidt.org. And from the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Last fall, Democrats lost ground with young voters, particularly young men. They voted for Joe Biden in 2020, but last year, President Trump narrowly carried the group nationwide. So, have Democrats really lost young men? Well, the party sure hopes not. NPR's Elena Moore is here to talk about efforts to win back this demographic. Hi, Elena.
Hey there.
Okay, so there's the typical political cycle. A party loses an election, they reflect, take a little while to get there. Here we are, more than 7 months later? How are Democrats reflecting on what happened with young men?
Well, for one, several emerging leaders who may also be potential 2028 Democratic presidential candidates have appeared to prioritize this group, both in their messaging and through policy proposals. Maryland Governor Wes Moore is one of them. Something he said during his last State of the State address kind of caught my ear. He called attention to declining numbers of young men entering the workforce or earning a college degree, and he directed his entire administration to find ways of better supporting this group. So I wanted to get his thoughts on how Democrats more broadly are engaging with young men.
When you watch oftentimes a party losing people, that's not the head, that's the tail. The reason you lose in election years is because you lost them long before.
And, for his part, Moore told me that addressing the needs of young men has been a long-time priority for him.
A long-time priority for Governor Moore. Okay, but what do we actually know about how young men writ large feel about politics? What's driving their vote?
Yeah, well, we know that economic concerns drove many to vote for Trump last fall, but a new Democratic effort is trying to provide a better picture. It's called the Speaking with American Men Project, described as part research hub, part engagement organization. This spring, they conducted 30 focus groups with young men and commissioned a national survey, and they found that many feel unseen by government officials as they deal with things like economic anxiety and declining mental health. Democratic pollster John Della Volpe is a co-founder of the project and helped lead that research.
This is a generation of young men. They're not lost to the Democratic Party. And if we care about our democracy, everyone needs to feel that their voice can be heard.
The report, Mary Louise, also points to a bunch of online spaces where it argues conservatives have just been more present and Democrats could invest more time.
Well, that's interesting. We know that Donald Trump, conservative groups who support him, they have invested in non-traditional media. Are Democrats trying to play catch up there?
Well, the report found that YouTube in particular is extremely popular. 95% of young men say they use it weekly, and some Democrats seem to understand that, like former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, also, seen as a potential 2028 presidential candidate, by the way. Last month, he appeared on the show Flagrant, which is a podcast hosted by comedian Andrew Schultz, and that's also filmed and streamed online.
We have to be encountering people who don't think like us and don't view the world the way we do, both in order to actually legitimately become smarter and better and make better choices and have better positions, and just in order to persuade.
So, Alina, what is Buttigieg trying to do there? How does an interview like that help Democrats?
Well, because it made him relatable. Yes, he talked politics, but he also just hung out, joked around, and answered questions about his personal life. And we've seen Trump use a similar strategy. He's appeared with prominent influencers who aren't known for talking politics, and it's allowed him to connect with people in a new way. And these kind of appearances, one strategist told me, are a prime example of how Democrats can begin reaching young men.
Thanks, Alina.
Thanks.
And here's Alina Moore.
Global instability has decreased demand for tabletop war games, as in highly detailed simulations used to predict how the U.S. might fare in a war with, say, China over Taiwan. NPR's Emily Fang got to see how one such war game was played and why people with access to classified information are playing them.
This war game involves 3 round tables, and on each, a large map of Taiwan and China. There's little blue and red pieces representing submarines, warplanes, and ships, and more than a dozen men, all here to play a game, imagining what could happen if China blockaded Taiwan.
If they shoot at us, we shoot back.
The think tank running this game series is the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. They want to figure out how to counter China if it blocked all food, fuel, and arms from getting to Taiwan. Webb Ewell is one of the players.
This thing can devolve into a global economic war rather than a military shooting war if the Chinese choose to blockade route.
Ewell directs a wargaming division at the Center for Naval Analyses, which advises the U.S. Navy. Today, he's playing Team Taiwan, and he's playing alongside Raymond Dubois, another player for Team USA today.
I'm having a lot of fun.
Dubois is a former acting Undersecretary of the Army, and at one point he was the most senior administrator at Pentagon headquarters.
The interesting thing about what we've done over the last 3 years is that these are unclassified games.
Then he mouths to me, "No, they're not."
Those of us who are
playing come from a background where we're very aware of what's not only on the planning policy side, but on the system side.
Meaning the players often have access to classified information and are aware of the latest weaponry the U.S. commands. Last year, Dubois played another version of today's game simulating a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. In that series, he played Team China.
And we won.
Today's game is messier. The players, including Team China, soon discover how difficult it is to de-escalate from even a blockade. Japan gets roped in. The U.S. attempts to airlift in supplies and cut off trade routes. And it all gets bloody.
Well, Taiwan does the surface to air, we do the air to surface.
And things in real life also get heated.
So I'm getting no information. I don't even know where the maritime relation is.
That's Ewell from the Center for Naval Analyses. He says the arguing shows the game is working.
You got to get at the human aspects of these problems and what's in their preferences and things like that. So the whole point is to get people's heads into a situation, thinking about how they would actually act if they were in it.
A few hours in, Taiwan offers a surprise truce to China. They offer to have their president resign, to kick out American troops, and to open their coveted semiconductor industry to China. Here's Eric Hagenbotham, a research scientist at MIT's Security Studies program and a coordinator today for Team China.
So no compliance with U.S. export controls.
In return,
is a commitment to not invade the island.
Ever. Mark Kansian from the hosting think tank helped design today's game. Out of the 4 times it's been played so far, 2 ended in vicious retaliation. He says today's ending was more peaceful.
I would say less violent outcomes, because we still ended up with a couple of dozen ships sunk and aircraft shot down and thousands of casualties, but not as much as in some of the previous games where the casualties were much higher.
China's hyped up military drills and military harassment around Taiwan. Military analysts warn China could be practicing for a real blockade. So Dubois argues wargaming is more needed than ever.
The more that people actually really talk to each other about, what do you think the other side will do? If we do this, what are they going to do? If they do this, what are we going to do? I think that's healthy, because I think ultimately it prevents a war.
As in, war games don't just help us test out new defense strategies. They also act as a deterrent, because the games show just how deadly war actually is. Emily Fang, NPR News, Washington.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News.
And you're listening here on 90.7 WFAE, and we're also streaming at WFAE.org. I'm Migdala Canal. Sometimes a power outage is just a power outage, but other times it can feel symbolic. WFAE's Tommy Tomlinson, in his On My Mind commentary, spent some time recently pondering that in the dark.
The power went out at our house the other night. I happened to be awake. It was 2:45 in the morning. It was dark all up and down the street. The kind of dark you almost never get in the city. The worst thing about the power going out, especially in the middle of the night, is the uncertainty. You don't know if it will soon be stifling in the house, or if the food in the refrigerator will spoil. It is an unnerving thing to feel powerless. It doesn't take long to wonder when things will be normal again. But there are remedies for these long black nights. The author E.L. Doctorow once said that writing is like driving at night in the fog. You can only see as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. You probably have a flashlight stashed away for dark moments just like this one. Or maybe just a candle and some matches. Even the light on your phone will do. Just something to help you see a step or two ahead. That's all you need, a step or two. It helps to check on the ones you care about. Poke your head in down the hall to make sure everybody else is okay. See if they need something to cool them down or soothe their fears. And it's useful to remember that we have all been powerless before, or at least felt that way. There have been dark nights longer than this one. Some of them have been terrifying. But in the end, the sun always comes. Light is undefeated. It's just a matter of sticking together and hanging on. The workers climbing poles and stringing wires have something to do with it. But the real power comes from us. I laid back down in the dark the other night and clicked on a lamp to let me know when the power came back. I'm not gonna lie, it was a restless night. But a few hours later, I woke up to the lamplight burning. We made it through another one. Darkness never wins.
Tommy Tomlinson's On My Mind column runs Mondays on WFAE and at WFAE.org. It represents his opinion, not WFAE's. You can respond to this column in the comments section at WFAE.org. And you can also listen to Tommy's podcast, Southbound, where he interviews notable Southerners. Well, the time now is 4:47, and you are listening to All Things Considered here on 90.7 WFAE and WFAE.org. I'm Nick Delacanal. I'm very happy to be with you today, as always. President Trump loves to boast about his deal-making prowess, but so far this term, he doesn't have too much to show for it. We're going to take a closer look just ahead after this break. And then coming up in the next hour, a new church in Colorado Springs combines spirituality with the ceremonial use of psychedelic drugs.
What makes this place magical is not the mushrooms. It's that when you walk in that door, your armor falls off.
More on this unusual congregation and the sense of community that its members swear by. It's coming up in about 20 minutes. There's a 50% chance of storms in our area this afternoon and evening. It should be a warm night ahead as well. Lows around 72 degrees. And then tomorrow should be mostly sunny and hot. Highs around 91 degrees with a slight chance of afternoon storms.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
What's that church called? Our Lady of Magic Mushrooms?
Yeah, stay with us.
I wonder what church Mikey's going to go to.
Don't forget to go to Harris Teeter.
This church would be St. Cannabis, perpetual weed.
St. Cannabis?
You know, sometimes steel is made of steel.
We're not mining iron ore. We're not mining coal to make the steel. We are taking steel and basically remaking it into steel again.
I'm Connor Risdall, the state of U.S. Steel, next time on Marketplace.
Catch Marketplace this evening at 6:30. It's coming up right after All Things Considered here on 90.7 WFAE. Support for our programming today comes from
Daddy.
Listeners and from the
St. Cannabis Apostolic Church.
Hospice and palliative care provider serving more than 5,000 patients daily across 38 counties in the Carolinas. VIA Health Partners or at viahp.org. And support also comes from Duke Energy, working to empower customers by providing tips designed to conserve energy, including home energy assessments, usage alerts, and smart thermostats. More at duke-energy.com/summer savings.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Tariffs and agreements to reduce them are top of the agenda at the G7 summit in Canada this week. And President Trump has described himself as a master deal maker, the guy who wrote The Art of the Deal. NPR's Mara Liasson takes a look at how he's doing as he negotiates trade issues with the rest of the world.
There's nothing more central to Donald Trump's brand than his self-declared talent at negotiating.
That's what I do. My whole life is like deals. One big deal. They want to make a deal. And at the end of this, I'll set my own deals because I set the deal. They don't set the deal. I set it.
But so far in this term, Trump has made just one trade deal with the United Kingdom. And even that deal is only a framework. Details TBD.
He has thrown a whole lot of spaghetti against the wall.
Wendy Sherman was Deputy Secretary of State in the Biden administration.
He said he was going to have 90 tariff deals in 90 days. He said that he would solve Ukraine in a day. He has said that we'll know whether Vladimir Putin is ready for a deal in 2 weeks. He has said that now 4 times.
So why has Trump had such trouble getting agreements if he's so good at deal-making? Douglas Holtz-Aiken is a conservative economist and the former head of the Congressional Budget Office.
The question I get most is, so what's the real strategy behind this? And I have to say with complete honesty, I don't think there is one. He's impulsive. I think it's just, can I surprise people? Can I get them on their heels? And thus look like I won the showdown.
Mike Froman, the former U.S. trade representative under President Obama, says it's too early to judge Trump's record as a deal maker. But one thing that puzzles him is why Trump sets expectations so impossibly high.
In my experience in government, presidents usually marshal their credibility very carefully. They always want to underpromise and overdeliver.
But Trump overpromises, and so far at least, he has underdelivered. Ian Bremmer, who runs the Eurasia Group consulting firm, has another theory about why Trump has trouble making deals.
Trump has a very good sense of top-line policies that are very popular and got him elected. Fair trade, end the wars, secure the border. But Trump personally has virtually no interest or expertise in the details of policy.
And trade deals in particular are all about the details. One negotiation that seems to have surprised Trump is China. Earlier this month, Trump posted in frustration that Chinese President Xi Jinping is, quote, very extremely hard to make a deal with.
And if Trump thinks he's a, kind of hard ass and tough negotiator, well, Xi Jinping thinks exactly the same.
Richard McGregor is a China analyst at the Lowy Institute, a think tank in Australia. He watched as Trump slapped high tariffs on China, warned the Chinese not to retaliate. When they did, Trump blinked and lowered the tariffs. He's reversed course like this so many times that Wall Street traders started using the acronym TACO for Trump Always Chickens Out. When a reporter asked him about this, an angry Trump said it was all part of the plan.
You ask a nasty question like that. It's called negotiation, you said.
It's called a negotiation, Trump says. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent calls it strategic uncertainty. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick describes it as a kind of genius.
You don't understand who's the President of the United States. So he's the closer. He gets deals done that we could never get done because he understands deals.
A White House spokesman sent NPR a long list of deal-making accomplishments, including, quote, the return of American hostages from Hamas, a Houthi ceasefire, countries such as Colombia retaking their citizen deportees, the return of Americans detained abroad, and Mexico and Canada shoring up border security. Experts like Bremer say Trump's on-again, off-again deal-making can shake trust in the United States, but other countries don't have a lot of alternatives right now.
The U.S. is the most powerful economy in the world, and so even if they don't trust the United States, their ability to meaningfully move away from the United States is really constrained in the short to medium term.
In the long term, other countries may move on, find new markets and trading partners, but that won't happen overnight. And in the meantime, Trump will keep trying to make a deal. Mara Eliason, NPR News.
These people are going to get more and more anti-Trump now because their funding got cut.
Time now for My Unsung Hero, our series from the team at the Hidden Brain podcast. My Unsung Hero
what is
tells
this,
the
Billy
stories
Graham?
of people whose kindness left a lasting impression on someone else. Today's story comes from Brad Larson. In May 2001, Larson's family gathered at a diner in New York City to celebrate his graduation from NYU. That would be the last time he saw his mom. She died suddenly just 2 weeks later. About 4 years after her death, Brad decided to return to the diner as a way to connect with her again.
So I took a seat at the bar, and there were maybe, 5 or 6 people there and a bartender. And they were all talking with each other like they knew each other. It seemed like a very kind of regulars kind of place. And I was quiet, and at some point, the bartender turned to me and asked me who I was and why was I there. And it felt like everyone's kind of energy went poof. And I shared that that was the last place that I had seen my mother. And I remember them just kind of immediately wanting to know my story and ask me about my mom and know more about what had happened. It seems very New York. They were loving and interested, and I was a total stranger. they were very kind, but actually, like, I hadn't experienced like a group of people to grieve with, really. And at some point, the bartender asked me if I remembered where I had sat with my family the last time, and I did remember, and he invited me to go sit there. The dining room was closed, and all the booths and tables were dark, but he unhooked that kind of velvet rope that they had to rope off the area and let me find the table and take a seat. And I just remember, like, having this wave of grief come over me and started crying, and feeling connected, and feeling my mother's presence, and feeling a lot of love, and the sort of mini temporary community that these strangers created for me that allowed me to connect with that last moment with my mom. And that experience is, even as I tell it, I feel the tears coming, and it just feels like yesterday. They gave me this moment with my mother, and yeah, that's magical. That's so loving.
Brad Larson lives in Portland, Oregon. You can find more stories of unsung heroes and learn how to submit your own at hiddenbrain.org.
Support for My Unsung Hero comes from Mathnasium. Whether students are ahead of the curve or need extra support, Mathnasium's goal is to build confidence through personalized math instruction. Learn more at mathnasium.com.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from the Council for Interior Design Qualification, whose certified designers work to protect occupants through the design of code-compliant and accessible environments. Learn more at cidq.org/NPR. From Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. From Linda Moodbell Learning Centers, one-to-one instruction to help students catch up or get ahead. Online or in-person instruction for reading, comprehension, and math. lindamoodbell.com/NPR. And from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
It is just before 5 o'clock on this Monday. I'm Nick Della-Canal. Just ahead, we're going to check the latest news headlines. And then hit us back up this evening for Today Explained. President Trump's military parade on Saturday in Washington celebrated 250 years of the U.S. Army. It was also Trump's birthday. We'll tell you what happened tonight at 7. And then at 7:30 on the Daily, a suspect has been captured in Minnesota after a political assassination. And New York Times Iran correspondents explain Israel's attack on Iran over the weekend. It's all ahead tonight. Support today comes from WFAE listeners and from Wise, an app for sending, spending, and receiving money across borders. Information on international money transfers and multi-currency cards at wise.com. Terms and conditions apply. This is 90.7 WFAE Charlotte, 90.3 WFAG Hickory, and WFAE.org, Charlotte's NPR news source.
Belcher knocked on Senator Hoffman's front door and repeatedly shouted, "This is the police, open the door."
Chilling details from the Minnesota lawmaker shootings with the suspect now in custody and facing federal murder charges.
It's Monday, June 16th, and this is All Things Considered from NPR News. And I'm Juana Summers. This hour, the fight over the future of Job Corps.
The free program helps young people get job skills. President Trump wants to eliminate it.
Every student that comes here that graduates is a success story. They're a success for making the decision to come to Job Corps.
Also, our reporter pays a visit to the Colorado Psychedelic Church.
I found exactly what I needed here. I found the community that I was searching for.
Plus, Nina Totenberg previews a busy rest of June on the Supreme Court beat.
20 cases still to decide, including birthright citizenship.
First, the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. The Minnesota man accused of killing a state lawmaker and her husband and wounding another state lawmaker and his wife while posing as a police officer is in custody, facing state and federal charges. It appears the suspect, 57-year-old Vance Belder, went to two other lawmakers' homes where they either were not home or he left after police arrived. Want to witness with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office.
Vance Belder inflicted unimaginable harm to our community Saturday morning, and he did it while impersonating the very people who are trusted to protect and serve. These violent acts strike at the heart of our democracy and the safety of those who serve the public with dedication and courage.
Belder faces 4 state charges, including second-degree and attempted second-degree murder charges. He will face 6 federal charges, including 2 counts of murder with a firearm. He surrendered to police as they closed in on him Sunday. President Trump is in Alberta for the G7 meeting, but his first meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Dan Karpenchuk reports Trump says a trade deal with Canada is achievable.
The two leaders were holding a bilateral meeting before the start of the G7 summit. Speaking to the media before their private talks, Trump said his primary focus will be trade and trade with Canada. And referring to Mark Carney on a first-name basis several times, Trump says his approach is about tariffs, but adds that he's sure something can be worked out.
I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something, hopefully.
Trump was critical that Russia was not at the summit, which he says should have been the G8. For NPR News, I'm Dan Karpenchuk in Toronto.
Israel struck Iran, hitting a state-run television station during a live broadcast. The latest Israeli strike coming after Iran launched a new wave of missiles at Israel, killing at least 8 people there. Israel had warned people in the middle of Tehran to evacuate ahead of the strike against the Tehran TV station, which Israel claims provides cover for Iranian military operations. Eli Lilly says it will soon offer all FDA-approved doses of its obesity drug online to patients paying out of pocket. The company first started selling discounted vials of Zepbound on its website last summer. More from NPR's Sydney Lupkin.
Vials of the highest doses of Eli Lilly's Zepbound, 12.5 and 15 milligrams, will soon be available to patients through the company's website. Providers can begin to prescribe them in July, and they start shipping in August. Discounted Zepbound vials are only available to patients not using their health insurance. All single-dose vials will be available for about $500 or less for a month's supply to patients who renew their prescriptions within 45 days. Otherwise, they are more expensive. Eli Lilly's announcement comes weeks after many insurance plans dropped Zepbound from coverage in favor of its competitor, Novo Nordisk's Wegovy. Sydney Lupkin, NPR News.
Stocks gained ground on Wall Street today. The Dow was up 317 points. The Nasdaq rose 294 points. This is NPR.
This is WFAE News. I'm Nick Della Canal. North Carolina will receive almost $150 million to address the opioid epidemic. Attorney General Jeff Jackson says the funds are coming as part of a nationwide settlement between every Attorney General, OxyContin manufacturer, Purdue Pharma, and previous owners of the Sackler family. Jackson says that combined with previous opioid settlements, North Carolina will receive more than $1.5 billion for opioid treatment programs.
We're now up to $1.6 billion that'll be coming to North Carolina. Vast majority of it will be hitting in the next 3 years, and the vast majority of that is designed by the terms of the agreement to go downstream into local communities to help fight addiction and break the cycle of addiction.
Local governments still need to sign on to the agreement to ensure that North Carolina receives its full share, but Jackson says he is optimistic that will happen. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein says applications are open for a hurricane recovery program for North Carolina homeowners. WFAE's Kenneth Lee has more.
Stein says the state is now accepting applications for the Renew NC housing program, which will help repair or rebuild homes damaged or destroyed by Hurricane Helene, which hit last September. The program is funded by a federal grant totaling more than $800 million. Renew NC covers several counties, including Catawba, Gaston, and Mecklenburg, specifically in the 28214 zip code area. Later this year, 2 additional programs will launch to support multifamily housing and workforce housing for ownership. Homeowners can check their eligibility and apply at renewnc.org. Kenneth Lee, WFAE News.
The Charlotte City Council is meeting at this hour as residents of a mobile home park in North Charlotte urge them to reject a proposed rezoning plan. The working-class immigrant families say they own their homes, but not the land, and the rezoning would allow market-rate apartments to replace their community. City Council is holding a public hearing on the petition at this hour. There is a 50% chance of storms in our area this afternoon and evening, then expect lows tonight around 72 degrees. This is WFAE News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the George Gund Foundation, working to make Cleveland more vibrant, sustainable, and just, and setting an example for the nation. More information available at gundfoundation.org. This is NPR.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. Around this time every year, the U.S. Supreme Court ends its term with a bang. The justices typically save their biggest rulings for June. And so NPR legal affairs correspondent Nina Totenberg is here to tell us about what she is anticipating. Hi, Nina.
Hi, Ari.
Some really important orders you're expecting are in cases that were not argued this term. What's going on there?
You know, Ari, to some extent, the Supreme Court used to be a relatively stately beat with its own kind of rhythm and predictability. But something happened in the first Trump administration that in the second Trump administration has now morphed into a phenomenon that has really changed the nature of the court's work.
How so? What's the change?
Well, put simply, the emergency docket, sometimes referred to as the shadow docket, is taking up more and more of the justice's time.
There's always been an emergency docket. What's different now?
Yes, there was always an emergency docket, you know, for death penalty cases, for example, or maybe... period of 16 years. The government filed a request for emergency action only 8 times. So now let's look at the second Trump term. Again, the numbers tell the tale. In the first 20 weeks of the second administration, Trump sought emergency actions from the court in 19 cases, and the justices have so far ruled in favor of the administration in 10 of the 12 decided cases. These are consequential cases involving the administration's efforts to lay off federal workers, shutter federal agencies, and deport people without due process. The bottom line here is that the workload of the court has increased exponentially on the emergency docket, and the court is most often deferring to the president, blocking the decisions of lower courts without explanation, and then telling them to spend months litigating these critical disputes further, regardless of the impact on whole agencies or people rounded up for deportation.
Interesting. And then there's the entire docket of cases that have been briefed, arguably. To decide there.
There are 20 cases left, about a third of the docket. Almost certainly the biggest one is birthright citizenship, the case in which President Trump claims that the Constitution doesn't guarantee citizenship to babies born in the United States. To date, no judge, including Republican-appointed judges, has agreed with Trump's legal claim. But the administration, I think knowing that they would lose birthright citizenship, didn't actually appeal those lower court rulings. Yes, the Justice Department asked the court to block them, but for a different reason. The administration claims that those lower court judges exceeded their power when they made their rulings that apply not just to the litigants or the region, but to the whole country. In other words, Trump is trying to prevent lower court judges from issuing rulings that bar policies found to be illegal in the whole country.
So that's the top case you're watching. What else are you looking out for?
The case testing state laws that bar minors from having access to puberty blockers as they transition away from their sex at birth. 25 states have enacted laws banning gender-affirming care for minors. And these trans kids and their parents contend that these laws unconstitutionally discriminate against them based on sex because the same medications they are banned from using are legal for other conditions in minors, conditions like endometriosis or early onset puberty.
This conservative court has really redefined religious freedom over the last several terms. Are we likely to see that again before the end of this term?
Yes, there's a very important case that has school administrators shaking in their boots. It's a case in which parents want to be able to have an opt-out provision in public school, excusing their children from class when the material being used, in this case it was books with some LGBTQ characters, is offensive to the parents' religious views. If the Supreme Court sides with the parents, and it certainly sounded that way at the oral argument, school officials fear that everyone would want to opt out of something, leading to frequent disruption in classes.
And then what are the other cases of the 20 that you're paying close attention to?
There's an important case challenging a Texas law that, in an effort to crack down on kids' access to pornography, requires everyone, including adults, online to provide proof of age first. There's also another challenge to the Affordable Care Act. This time, opponents of the ACA are targeting a measure that requires all insurance companies to provide certain free preventive care. It's something millions of people now take for granted, and, there's always the possibility it could be thrown out. And there's more, but, all right, I'm just tired thinking about this.
Well, we'll be with you for the rulings. Look forward to hearing your coverage. NPR's Nina Totenberg.
Thank you, Ari.
The city of Colorado Springs is home to a unique congregation that sprang up last year, the Colorado Psychedelic Church. That is its official name. It blends spirituality and the ceremonial use of psychedelics. But as Colorado Public Radio's Haley Sanchez reports, substances may get people in the door, but community is what they say keeps them coming back. And a warning, this story describes the use of drugs that are illegal in many parts of the United States and can be dangerous.
Hey, y'all. I'm glad we waited.
On a rainy Tuesday evening, nearly 20 congregants enter through a walkout basement door. They quietly settle into a circle of couches. It looks like an ordinary book club or Bible study. Benji Dezaval opens the weekly gathering at the church with a lecture, similar to a sermon. Each week has a theme. This one's maternal energy.
Because when we say mother, most people, of course, will hear woman.
43-year-old Lee Mead attends church events regularly. He works in nonprofit and moved to Colorado Springs from Houston last August, not knowing anyone. And within a week, he stumbled on the psychedelic church.
It's not just a bunch of people doing drugs and some guys in the basement. Like, it is nice down here, and it is more about the community than the substances.
Mead is just one of many congregants who all say the same thing about this place. That sense of connection was proven to him one night after taking psilocybin at the church. As he was coming back to reality, he says the stress of work and realizing how unhappy he was caused a panic attack.
People that had just seen me like maybe 3 times here at the church carried me through that and said a lot of very affirming and calming things, which of course made it even worse because I was receiving love that I didn't feel I was worthy of. And so to feel that love and that compassion from people who were strangers, I hadn't felt that level of care and level of love for a long time.
Mead says he didn't use psychedelics in the months following, but he never missed a Friday gathering.
This is my family here. This is truly my third place.
This is the Colorado Psychedelic Church, a self-described spiritual community that uses psychedelics in communal ceremonies.
We're going to go ahead and begin this. So this is the DMT itself.
At the end of the weekly guidance, a small offering, 1 puff of DMT, short for dimethyltryptamine. The compound occurs naturally in some plants and animals and is a powerful psychedelic known for its short but intense effects.
It's not going to be like cannabis where you inhale, exhale, and your lungs are right.
The use of substances like this is illegal under federal law. Colorado decriminalized certain psychedelics in 2022, and since then, therapy clinics have popped up. The state's regulated program requires licensed facilitators to oversee preparation, facilitation, and integration after. The state does not regulate informal settings, like at the psychedelic church. In services, the churches use DMT, psilocybin, iboga, and mescaline, all of which were decriminalized in Colorado.
Thank you so much for sharing this time.
Before anyone takes a dose here, Dezaval, the church's founder, says people go through a safety screening. Participants must be over 21 and are required to complete training that explains the effects of psychedelics and how to navigate the experience.
We have this to make sure that we put the responsibility and the accountability on people. It's not, I gave you this, Godspeed. No. I gave you this, I gave you the tools to do it right. So I want to make sure that you can heal, not get hurt.
Some facilitators at the church have medical training and are on hand in case of emergencies, Desival says. They ask participants about medications that may interact dangerously with psychedelics, like some antidepressants. Desival says what started as 3 people in his basement has grown to nearly 700 congregants, and the church is soon expanding into a second home down the block.
There's a lot of people who are looking so hard to find a place to belong. And the number one thing that I've heard, I mean, we're talking since that first month, is I've been looking for this.
The New England Journal of Medicine recently released a large study on psilocybin and depression, which showed positive signs, but that more data is needed. One thing researchers did agree on, though, human connection matters. And that could help explain why places like the psychedelic church resonate for people like Sarah Snap.
What makes this place magical is not the mushrooms. It's that when you walk in that door, your armor falls off. And it's in that softness and vulnerability that we build these relationships.
Snap is a stay-at-home mom with a background in religious studies. Raised Catholic, she says she spent much of her life feeling alone.
I say I was diagnosed with depression following the birth of my daughter. But I had been depressed for almost my whole life.
A year ago, she tried psilocybin in a therapeutic setting and says it changed everything.
I found exactly what I needed here. I found the community that I was searching for. I found people who wanted to know the real me.
This church doesn't fit neatly into a box. It's part support group, part spiritual sanctuary, part experiment. For people like Mead and Snap, it's something else entirely. A place where they say they feel connected to something bigger than themselves. For NPR News, I'm Haley Sanchez in Colorado Springs.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Stay with us. There is much more to consider coming up here on 90.7 WFAE and WFAE.org. I'm Nick Della Canal along with you on this Monday. Just ahead, a new opioid settlement for Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family has been approved. And then in about 15 minutes, new details are emerging about the man accused of shooting 2 Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses on Saturday.
When they opened the door, Belter shined the flashlight in their faces and said there had been a shooting reported in the house. When Belter lowered his flashlight, they realized he was not a police officer.
The latest on the attacks, that and more is coming up. There is a 50% chance of storms in our area this evening, and then it should be fairly warm tonight, lows near 72. Then it is looking like a very hot week ahead. We could see highs in the 90s every day through Friday. Right now in Charlotte, it's 89. Stay cool out there if you can. It's 5:19.
Hey y'all, this is Tommy Tomlinson. This week on Southbound, my guest is Jeremy Markovich. His newsletter, The North Carolina Rabbit Hole, covers all manner of strange and wonderful little stories about the Tar Heel State. Listen to this and every episode of Southbound, wherever you listen to podcasts, and also at WFAE.org.
Hey, it's Michael Barbaro from The Daily. It's one thing to love public radio, as we all do, but it's a special thing to support it. Consider this. If you've got a car you don't need anymore, or a car that's simply too expensive to meet.
You're right back there? Or are you asleep?
I'm good.
we gotta go get my meds or something?
Yeah, that's why we're on this road. We gotta go through 51 and go get those drops. eye drop called Pataday. It's for allergies. I need to buy some.
Okay. Panthers. What's farther, Huntersville or Gastonia?
I don't know, Joe. Don't really know.
Huntersville traffic is crazy though.
Yeah, right around that exit 28.
And 23.
Yeah, wherever we were, it was a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Oh, I guess Earth Fair went out of business again.
Huh?
I guess Earth Fair went out of business again.
Oh. Why you say that?
Because there were no cars in the parking lot.
Oh.
Oh.
Thank God they ain't sent us to Rockingham or something like that. That would have been... Huh?
Well, if I ever have that happen, I just take it to the emergency room.
Oh, for what?
Whatever. I mean, it's stupid. They start sending you all over the place.
I mean, I don't... Could you imagine how, like, insane that would be to go to the emergency room and then wait for the... Just because my eyes, I don't even feel. Like, I'm not in any pain.
There might be so, but there's something wrong for sure. We need a dog.
What kind of dog?
Between Angel and Olsen. How about that?
Oh, a mini labradoodle. Something like that. I miss my dog. We're gonna take the kennel down to the beach?
No, Rosie took the kennel.
Oh, she did. are the I-485 express lanes coming?
I don't know, Joey. It ain't bad to go up there, but you know how much it cost us to go to... it was $40 to go to the one we went before.
Statesville?
Yep.
Damn.
Yep. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think we took the toll road coming back, didn't we?
Yeah, a little piece of it.
But Statesville, we had to take the whole thing. Didn't we? Both ways. Damn, I have to shave again.
You do. So that's what, Sunday and Monday.
Uh-huh.
What is it? What is it your brother calls you?
The wildebeest. Ah. And them girls would be like, you got some pretty eyes. I said, no, don't worry, honey. They don't work. You don't want them. They don't work.
Yeah.
Right, Daddy?
Yeah.